Hello and welcome to today's edition of Extraordinary Outcomes. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host and founder of Pitchling, the buyer seller engagement platform. Today, we bring you the seventh installment of the eight-part limited series, Fixing the 5% Problem in B2B Sales. In this limited series, we bring you engaging discussions with experts from around the world on the elephant in the sales room, the abysmally low rate of conversion in B2B sales. Today, we speak with Brad Jevons, Principal Consultant, SA Partners, Michelle Bucham, CEO of the Cham Group, and Amit Agarwal, SVP and Head APAC MEA at Algonomy. First, we meet Brad Jevons. Brad is an organization improvement leader whose purpose is creating a better future economically, socially, and environmentally for generations to come. Brad helps organizations directly define and achieve excellence journeys. He works with organizations across many differing fields: education, manufacturing, mining, agriculture, supply chain, technology, government, and health. Brad is an Agile Scrum at Scale practitioner and Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. He's an associate with SA Partners, the assessors for the Shingo model, the most prestigious business award for excellence in the Western world. Brad hosts the Enterprise Excellence podcast and is an award winning author. His recent book, Agile Sales, outlines how to apply Agile to sales and marketing to amplify customer experience and business performance. Meet Brad. Brad, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to have you here, and it's great talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Samajan.
So let's dive right in. The data that you see, and depending upon where you see it, varies from 1.8% to 7.8%, depending upon the industry verticals and the geography. But that's the conversion rate from lead to close in B2B sales. How do you think we got here?
Samajan, there's three things I'd say that have led to it, in my view. One is technology has led to it. The other one is our management systems in sales that we've used, and the other one is our leadership approach that we've used. They're the three elements that I'd say have led to this poor conversion rate. And I might just start with the first one, Samajan, which I think is one that everyone knows, is that traditional sales, and still a lot of salespeople I come across, they're selling product still. And they're selling based on, I can get you this product. It's got these great features and benefits. It'll help you with these needs. Here's the price. I can get it to you. A customer can get all that through a website and more now. And they can do that research before they even engage a salesperson. So the traditional sales approach is pretty well dead, because by the time they turn up to a customer and the customer has already done their research and probably knows the product a fair bit compared to what they do, it's just down to price. Because a customer will always find a point of difference to buy on. And if they've ruled out every other point of difference, they're going to bring it down to price. And I think that's just demoralized conversion rate. Competition is massive because salespeople are selling against websites and amazing marketing engines. And that's one part, technology, which we could basically lay it down to amazing marketing departments and IT departments nowadays. That's one part that's, I think, is defunct the salesperson. The other part, but is our traditional management systems. The second one, our traditional management systems in sales have been very much about measuring, rewarding, recognizing, driving the individual. And it has been largely results-based, focused on lag measures. You know, your job's to get sales, go get sales. Why aren't you getting sales? You need to go get sales, get out there and get sales, make more calls, do whatever you got to do. And I think that pure management approach of really just driving the result and driving the individual, I think it's reduced the amount of innovation that can happen within the sales departments, because it's people coming together and working as a team that actually leads to innovation and great things. Whenever people are out there by themselves in a stressful role being pushed and pushed and pushed, they don't think clearly and they just go from day to day, and it doesn't create innovation. The third thing I'd say is our leadership approach in sales. It hasn't been focused on coaching as much as it should be. Like, I see a lot of sales leaders where they're basically purely managing the individual. They're not actually leading the team to help the team grow and improve and evolve, and also lead the team to really place themselves in their customer's shoes and understand what's changing with their customer and strategically look at the market and think what's happening and then evolve. So that I'd probably say there's not a culture of continuous improvement largely in sales because of that management and then the leadership approaches. So 3 things. One is changing technology led by marketing and IT evolution, which we haven't kept up with. Our management practices haven't kept up, and our leadership practices haven't driven a culture of continuous improvement innovation that's been needed to keep up. A lot of sales teams haven't evolved to continue down the path of being a value add consultant who can actually deliver great outcomes for the customers. Because if you look at it, if you're a general manager or a CEO or a vice president and you're looking at 2 options, you're right, okay, I could generate leads to send into a sales team where they're largely just selling product and price and supply, and it costs me a lot of money and cars and phones and all that. Or actually, I could do that same thing and just channel them into a website and get the same outcome. Wow, let's put our money into the website because that doesn't require labor. And so let's go that way. And I think the sales teams that are selling on that traditional product and price and feature and benefit type of approach, they're becoming sort of obsolete. And I think that's what's happening.
So how do we get out of this abyss?
Everything in Agile is about the customer. So the first thing is you've got to place yourself in your customer's shoes. You've got to know who are your ideal customers now and who are the people in there, the personas that are going to buy from you. So that's the first thing. And you've got to get deep into their world. You've got to know their conscious value side, but also their unconscious emotional side, both at work and away from work. There's some cool techniques you can do that. Persona mapping, empathy mapping, things like that. Next thing that I haven't mentioned that's very important is we need to form our teams not based on silos and divisions in our company, but we need to form small teams based on who the customer needs to get great outcomes. Now, in Agile coming out of the IT world and a lot of other places now, they physically put these different skill sets into the team. Think of, actually, a great example of it is our special forces around the world. You've got our big military forces where everyone's split into their role, but there you've got these elite teams where a 5-person team will include all the different capability, the medic, in there, in that one unit. Why? It's because they can be extremely agile and fast when they're in the field. Why also is because they can train each other, cross-train each other and start to skill each other up. There's all these benefits, but I don't think you have to necessarily go, right, you guys are the team, right, off you go. You can do it informally through cultural aspects if people are in the same community together. But in true Agile, you'd really align them. You'd create the team to suit the customer. If you get your team right and it's aligned to the customer and we're starting to measure and sweat the right things so that we're a unit and we're doing things to build team culture, it all comes back then to transparency, inspection, adaptation. So if the measures and performance we're driving for are visual and transparent, and CRMs and softwares nowadays are so powerful for this. It's live, we can see it. But the thing is, it's up to that whole unit of 5 cross-functional team members, if it is cross-functional, to really be sweating that. Typically, people in Agile or Scrum will meet for, 5 to 10 minutes a day or at least a week. And there's a whole technique to that. But what they're ultimately doing is they're inspecting the measures and the progress of deals and improvement activities they're doing as a team to make better outcomes for customers. And then based on what they're seeing, they're adapting to it. I see a lot of sales teams where we've drifted into being account managers and we're just really going around the same accounts and staying where we're comfortable. I think we need to get back to being able to hunt but hunt in a value add way, not in a dominant, low value add, pesky way. And the way to do that, once you understand who your persona is and the market you're going after and who the decision makers are, and you're really in their shoes well, there's a technique called customer journey mapping. And this is typically the technique I use to help teams form up, how are we going to go about this? So customer journey mapping is where the team's placing themselves in the customer's shoes and you're mapping the buyer's journey from what they call discovery through to research, through to purchase, through to delivery, and through to devotion. So let me just explain this. With discovery, you're actually mapping what are these personas we're targeting, like factory managers doing day in, day out. How do we help them discover us with value and delight before they're even thinking of buying a new software or before they're even thinking of going into automation? Okay, cool. They're going to these events. They're looking at this feed of data. They're really driven by anything on Lean or Six Sigma at the minute. Okay, right. That's the way we've got to do it. Then you go into the research phase. So the key with the research phase is that you've got a technique as a company where you're actually helping them discover what they need to do. And all of a sudden, in a way, they're on this conveyor belt of the buying journey. And the trick to the salesperson then is to keep that conveyor belt moving so that you've aligned your sales process to the ultimate buying journey the customer wants to go on. It's a process that helps customers really discover the need, not you come in late when they've already discovered the need and the real solution. And all that happens is out pops an order, and then you go through the delivery process. Now, in the delivery process, as a cross-functional team, you're figuring out, how do we deliver this so it's just the most amazing experience? And then you're going on to devotion. Devotion is, how do we help them through their whole life cycle of buying journey? What can we help them on next? So devotion is, you're really thinking as a team, how do we build an approach and a framework to keep that customer sticky with us and only looking at us for evermore? And it's an amazing technique. It allows you to look really holistically. Short answer is, you've got to help them discover you and get in there early.
Right. Brad, this was great. Wonderful chatting with you. And I look forward to talking more. We'll figure out how and where. But it has been an absolute delight. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Samajan. I really appreciate it. And I hope some sales teams and leaders have gained value, because the results are astounding if you can tie some of these things we've spoken about together. So good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Next up is Michelle Beauchamp, CEO of the Champ Group. Michelle is a certified coach, speaker, and trainer on the John Maxwell team. Michelle's 25 years in corporate America as a sales leader in telecommunications, combined with her 10 plus years as an entrepreneur, has equipped her to help others explore their strengths, improve areas of weakness, and through a journey of inner discovery, create inclusive cultures that enrich relationships and increase productivity. A member of Connected Women of Influence, Michelle volunteers as a SUE, Successful Unstoppable Empowered Talk Coach, to guide crafting and delivering memorized talks. Michelle, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
So let's dive right in and let's address this elephant in the room, which apparently we don't want to talk about, which is this abysmal conversion rate from lead to conversion rate in B2B sales. What do you think got us here?
As I think about it, first of all, things have changed a lot since I came into it. So a lot has changed in the past. Back when I started, you really did do cold calls. You really did. You really did go walk in, knock on the door, peek in, figure out how to get past the gatekeeper, warm up with the gatekeeper. You really did do those kind of things because people were there, right? So much has changed. And now and then on top of the fact that just time has changed, technology has completely evolved, and we really better keep up with technology. I think the other thing, and it's actually a quality that I think we need to have as salespeople, and that is patience. And you said you have to be ready. No matter what we tell people, if they're not ready, they're not buying. Right? Yeah. And so I think that one is we have to be patient and we have to be able to qualify whether or not they're ready. But I know a lot of sales leaders, they get frustrated with their teams because they say it's taking too long to close the sale. Yeah. And so, one part of that question is, are you equipping your team with what they need to be able to close the sale, right? Do they have the skill set? Do they have everything available for them in your organization to be able to give them? Do they have the tools that they need to be able to close the deal? That's question number one. And the other question, and how many? The pipelines. That's another problem. People don't have enough pipeline, right? Is the pipeline full? And kind of back to the skill set and the mindset of the salespeople. they get hung up on 2 or 3 prospects that they're working with, and they put a lot into those 2 or 3 prospects, and then they take too long to close, or they don't close. So the leaders become upset about it. And so part of that is, how's our pipeline? Is it sufficiently full? Are we consistently working to build up our pipeline so that we can continue to get new prospects? And so, that's some habits. What kind of habits are being formed by your teams? That's something that I think leaders need to ask. And then sometimes I know that companies, they require, no matter what, you need to have 25 new prospects in your CRM every week, right? And so my question is, how realistic is that? I mean, are you asking them to just fill out the pipeline? Because, listen, I led salespeople for a long time. They'll put anything in their pipeline just to get you off their back.
Yeah.
So what's the quality of the 25 prospects that are putting in? Is it better to require 10 and have them be solid leads, or are you just looking for quantity, right? So obviously we need the quality over the quantity, but we need enough of the quality. And so where does that fit in? In the whole marketing and sales, what's that relationship? Is marketing doing a good job promoting the company, promoting the value, preparing the sales team, so when they do make contact, it's a qualified lead that they can talk to, or are they just feeding you a bunch of leads that are never going to go anywhere? To me, a lot of times it's consistency, right? I think that recently saw statistic 44% of people give up after the first follow-up. That's a big problem, right? And so the closing ratio is low because the salesperson gets frustrated, and doesn't want to be told no, runs out of ability to connect with people, runs out of energy to connect back, don't know what to say. Email number 5, what is it I say this time, because I haven't heard from them yet. So leaders need to be equipped to help their team remain consistent. 50% of sales are more likely to close when we have continued follow-up. So we can't, and we all know it's about timing. That's another thing. We all know it's time. When you said early on, you got to be ready to buy. You got to be willing to buy. How good of a job did this salesperson do uncovering what the problem is or the problems are? And if they're not able to equip the team with how to position what their product or service does solve the problem that the prospect and the client has, then the sales aren't going to close. So that's a lot of times where I spend time working with people now in my training business is, what kind of questions did you ask? What was the response when you asked that? You know what they tell me? Wow, I didn't ask that. And when I say, well, what do you think stopped you from asking that? It's that, we are known as salespeople as being pushy, right? We're known as that. So they didn't want to feel, or they didn't want to come across as being pushy. So there's, back to the ways sales leaders can train, there's ways to ask questions. When you're building a relationship, then you have to ask questions, because how are you going to know what they even might want to buy or need to buy if you're not asking the right kind of questions? They might not buy from you. Everybody's not going to be our client. And they may not buy now, but they may buy a year from now. They might have just made their decision about the budget. I just talked to a prospect the other day. She's a client, and I was asking her about a particular program. She said, yeah, you know what? I decided not to do that program this year. Okay. So that means the timing's not going to happen now. It happened last year. It could happen next year. Back to consistency, back to the need to follow up, and the courage to ask. think that the account executives need to have more collaboration with the SDRs. And by the way, leaders do have a big responsibility. The sales leaders have a big responsibility. And that is, what kind of development are those young SDRs getting? What kind of development opportunity are they getting? And who's listening to their calls, by the way? Who's listening? Who's listening? And what kind of feedback are they getting about the kind of messages that they're leaving in the calls or the emails that they're sending? And I think that's back to the sales leaders, right? I mean, there's
Absolutely.
a lot of and so to me, also, what I really hope and like to see, and sometimes disappointed that I don't see enough of, is people taking responsibility to goal set. I mean, regardless of what your leader, your manager told you your goal was, your quota was, you need to have your own goal set. And I work a lot with business owners as well, smaller business owners as well. And, it's so important. I mean, you better have your goals. What's your annual goal? Then what's your quarterly goal? Then what's your monthly goal? Then what's your daily goal? I mean, it is all about, back to that word again, consistency. Again, back to kind of the entrepreneurial mindset. You have to have your own goals to be able to really get to where you want to get, to be able to serve the number of clients that you need to serve. If your closing ratio is not where it should be, then we got to take responsibility to do the extra work, to the what I call the and then some, to make it happen.
Nice. So let's make a switch now to the other side, the solution side of this discussion. What would you say can fix this problem?
I'm going to go back to one is recognizing the funnel, what's in the funnel, and where are the prospects in the funnel, and what do we do with those prospects in the funnel? A lot of times my focus is taking our own responsibility. So as a leader of a team, what are we doing to equip our team with tools that they can close business? Let's kind of break that down and make that a case study for everybody. Here's what they did. Here's the challenge here. These are the objections that they had. Here's how they handled the objections, and really help people understand the medicine is, here's how the person closed the job, not just what they did, but how they did it. Our leaders have to take responsibility for the lack of closing that our team's doing. And I can't emphasize enough that that people have to be courageous. I mean, I see courage and confidence as a big determination on the success that we'll have. So the leader needs to have courage to say, I don't really know if I don't have the tools right now for you, but let me do some research and come back to you. The salesperson needs to have the courage to say, you know what, prospect, that's a really good question. I don't have the answer for you right now. Let me find out and I'll come back to you, because they want to be a consultant. After you've been in the conversation, you say, yeah, it sounds like you really do have some challenges. And guess what? My company that's not really what we do. That is such a way to build trust. Building a relationship is really acknowledging, how can we help this person buy? I mean, my language that I like to use is help someone buy, right? Don't come in and start talking about what you have. It's really, let's discover. I mean, the discovery process and the whole scheme of things, that's where the time is spent, right? In the discovery. Because we have to understand what's going on with them. And we typically don't understand it all in the first call. It can take two or three calls, which I think that the more that we're willing to really get to know someone and let them get to know us, one of the things, be vulnerable, reveal some things that we are uncomfortable with. But really understanding what they need and what they want, and being a chameleon. I mean, we all know to be a successful professional salesperson, we have to be able to be a chameleon, and that's going to happen when we understand them, when we empathize with their challenges that they're sharing with you, and being honest about whether or not we can help them. But I think that the conversations, and so to me, what I say is like, it all does start with the conversation. And if we can't have honest conversations, and it can't usually happen in 15 minutes. So we need to be able to to understand. And we also need to be able to understand how we're spending our time. I mean, we can't spend a 2-hour conversation on someone who's not likely to be a valid prospect, but we have to be able to have tools to be able to understand how to have a conversation, get to the point, show that you care, figure out what happens next, and continue the dialogue.
Wonderful. I think that's a great point we need to continue to talk, and I do hope that we'll be able to pick up threads from this and go in depth and talk a little more in the near future. Thank you so much.
You brought up some great points. Thank you so much.
Finally, meet Amit Agarwal, SVP and Head APAC MEA at Algonomy. Here are the highlights of his career so far. Amit has sold in 23 countries across bootstrapped Series A, B, C, D startups. He is the author of the book, The Ultimate Sales Accelerator, and he has coined the term salespreneur and created a new sales strategy called use case selling. Let's hear Amit talk about his take on the elephant in the sales room. Amit, welcome to this special segment on extraordinary outcomes. I'm delighted to talk to you because you are one of the thinking sales leaders in India.
Thank you, Shubhanjan, for mentioning me as a thinking sales leader. Hearing that from you means a lot.
So let's address this elephant in the sales room. Our terrible conversion rate. I mean, some data is saying it's as low as 1.8%. Some is saying 6%, 7.8%, and so on, depending on the geography and industry. I'm sure there are some outliers, but this is the broad story.
Sure.
What do you think, Amit, got us here?
Yeah, so I think when we look at conversions, to me, conversions are basically two aspects. One is the marketing aspect, the other is sales aspect. Correct? So if we look at marketing, we are talking about marketing qualified leads, and the conversion ratio which generally we track is MQL to SQL. So what marketing qualified leads have come to sales qualified leads, and in sales the ratio which we track is from SQL to conversion. Right. So from sales qualified lead to actual conversion. So let's break these two into these two parts. The
Sure.
Marketing. So if I look at the marketing part, if we look at why it is low, in my experience of working in these 4 companies across last 11 years, one of the things which I have seen is that the ratio is lower, one because of wrong definition of TAL or target account list. So if you, just to give you some examples, I'll give you an example. So SDR sets up a meeting with a restaurant which is fine dining. Okay? Now the salesperson, and in that meeting actually I was also there, so therefore I couldn't relate more to it. When we speak, we find out that actually this is a fine dine restaurant, although our target account list is quick service restaurant. So quick service restaurant like KFC, Pizza Hut, these kind of restaurants which is a different segment, and we have defined it 150 stores and above and all of that. But the meeting was set up. Now the salesperson didn't say no to that, so that is one mistake, correct? When the salesperson went in, after 45 minutes, we found out that this doesn't even satisfy the requirement because it is not in the TAL, it is a fine dine restaurant. Now, by the time it was 45 minutes of 2-3 people on the call was wasted. Yeah? So this is an example of wrong TAL, where I think the marketers as well as sales leaders, they have to constantly be very, very clear on what is their TAL. That will help the marketing team. Okay? The second example in the same area of marketing is wrong incentive structure. So what happens is in this same example, if the SDR is rewarded for basically booking meetings more, then qualified opportunities which are coming out of it. Correct. And this was the case in this example where the SDR percentage was for every meeting they book, they get a amount.
Right.
So the incentive and the conversion, especially in enterprise sales like ours, it happens very long. So 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. So a SDR doesn't even remember what will happen after that. So according to me, it is an example of wrong incentive structure. If the incentive structure is where, of course, a meeting is set up with the right TAL, that has to be rewarded. But then if the opportunity is created means there is a need, then it is rewarded. Correct?
Right.
So in sales part, what I have seen is that now opportunity has to be created, or opportunity has been created. Now opportunity to closure is very low. Opportunity to closure is very low. Why it is happening? One distinct reason I have seen is when if suppose a salesperson has to make the following statement. Assume the company name is Pinnacle Software. Just assume. So if a salesperson of Pinnacle Software has to make and you are my client, correct? And your opportunity has been created. Now, if I have to sell to you, I have to only make one statement. The statement will be as follows. What will client Shubhanjan, your company, lose if Pinnacle Software doesn't implement this solution? So if you notice, I have not asked for gain, aspiration. I have asked for lose, because a lot of research has gone which says anxiety is a stronger emotion, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what I have noticed is that on simple terms, you can say value proposition. But why I am mentioning this is that when I ask my team also that you are selling to client ABC, if they don't buy our solution now, what will they lose? So that is an element, sales and pre-sales teams are very good in sharing features and, depth of detail, breadth of coverage. If you ask him, can you give me 3 reasons? If suppose you are a customer and you ask them, can you give me 3 reasons? Why should I buy your software now? What will I gain or what will I lose? Okay. This kind of narratives, I actually called it as a board deck, and I created it because one client during discussion with me, they said, it was with a lot of pain. A client said that what will I present to my board? So that stuck to me, and I created a 3-point narrative, which is point number 1, why does client A need this solution? Point number 2, why does this client A need this solution now? Correct. And the point number 3 is, why does this client A need this solution from my company or company name? And more often not, just by seeing this, myself or in fact, if you are seeing it as also, any business leader will be able to say that, do you have anything concrete to be of value to the customer? Because if we can't do this in good in that board deck, what will we do in the client presentation? These narratives which qualify the opportunity and move it down the funnel faster to closure, which I have simplified in these 3 terms. Why do you need this solution? Why do you need it now? Why do you need it from me? Okay. So this generally is lacking. And now why is it lacking? One is you can say structure part is lacking. The other part is that I call sales owners and pre-sales owners as doctors. Correct? A doctor is an expert in an area. Correct? You meet an eye doctor, you meet ear or brain doctor, neurosurgeon, heart cardiologist. They are experts in that area. When you are an expert in an area, if you will notice, if you go to a doctor, they will tell you not only what you are asking, they will tell you something more which you don't know, isn't it? When you are sick, God forbid you are sick, but if you are sick when we go, I think that level of expertise mindset, is what I have seen is somewhere lacking in sales and pre-sales organization, which further decreases the conversion rate. Apart from the structure of what I said is that qualifying structure, in this case it was board deck.
Okay, so basically, while we were discussing the problem, you did mention some of the solutions. So basically, it came intertwined. But if you now want to move the discussion completely to the solution side, what do you think should be done to actually change this conversion?
Now, from a solution point of view, as I mentioned, I will divide them in following areas. So one is templates or processes. Correct? So one of the template or process which I have created is called board deck, which addresses these 3 W. Why do you need this solution? why does the client need this solution now, and why does the client need this solution from my company? Correct. So that's one. The second part is called brevity. Correct. So less is more. And I was reading the same thing. Gartner has recently coined a term called sense making selling, where they say there's a giver seller. Giver seller gives lot of information. Whatever clients ask, the giver seller gives. However, the sense making seller, prioritizes things which are meaningful. So the third point is, again, if you have to look at, if somebody is an expert, he or she can control his narrative easily. Otherwise, if the person is not expert, they will go anywhere. So the expertise first lies in the thought itself, which is the ownership of the sales leadership, that I will cultivate and I will reward people for developing expertise. Because typically they are rewarded for relationships. Whereas for expertise, if the mindset first comes, action will happen. I tell my team also that why are you waiting for need coming from the customer? In fact, this is a chance. Be a doctor who if you look at Ayurveda, they do pulse diagnosis. They don't ask you what is the problem, correct? They touch your pulse, and they tell you what are your problems. So I am of that school of thought that especially in complex B2B sales, if you are on the table of a customer, you should be going from a perspective of, okay, the customer himself doesn't know what the problem is. I am an expert in this area. I will find various levers, and maybe there are 2-3 levers which are the current customer doesn't know it is a problem right now, but when I talk to them, we'll find it. And the area which we work in, almost 95%, almost close to 100%, none of them have that business case upfront. They don't have it because, as I said, we are selling things which are not coming through inbound marketing. We have to create the need. So
Wonderful.
that is, I think, Shubhantan, you will agree, if we start doing that, conversion rate will increase, isn't it?
Amit, this was a great discussion. I think you bring in a different kind of perspective from, you have a very unique perspective, primarily the startup world. And I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope you had a good time too.
Yeah, pleasure is always mine, Shubhanjan. We have spoken in the past. Always pleasure to talk to you. And I think this time this topic was very close to me, B2B conversion rate, because I have worked in startups and which are in a specific industry. So my market size has been always optimal. Correct. So for me, the target account list was very optimal. So the conversion rate was the thing which, in fact, my one-liner for my team is 100% conversion rate, which nobody likes. But, however, we are just moving on that spirit. People have understood the spirit, and therefore, thank you for inviting me to giving a chance to share this spirit with a larger audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tune in next week to meet Patty Pokorchak, founder, Small Biz Sales Coach, and Saurav Sengupta, founder of Sales Design Institute, to take a peek into what they're thinking about this elephant in the sales room.
One thing hasn't changed is a lot of sales professionals are still really feature oriented. They go, hey, we've built the better mousetrap, come and get it. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. They don't know their industry. They don't know their competition. They don't know the benefits. They don't have the stories to tell about who they've helped. People buy value, the results and outcomes, and they don't know that. And it's really hard to get through that. You don't need to know that you have so much horsepower, so much torque, so much megahertz or whatever. Nobody cares. Will it go faster? Can you help me do my job faster and better? I want to know that. And tell me somebody else. Tell me a story, because stories sell.
Most of them are coming from backgrounds where they have actually, for the lack of a better word, managed large sales teams. They are good at the human part of it. They're good at hiring. They're good at maintaining. But the concept of capturing data, sanitizing it, and putting it in the form of funnel, and then actually measuring it is not being done enough by the sales leadership. And I think it's purely an insight problem. If they were to know that we can run sales in this way, in a like they run it in the US, right? I mean, they don't even think about starting off a sales team without having Salesforce in place and measuring, or HubSpot, or measuring the funnel.
As we come to a close of this series, the response from all of you has been overwhelming. Thank you. You can still share what you think about this elephant in the sales room. Please use the link below to record your views in video, and we will continue to showcase them into our show in our upcoming episodes. Time to wrap up for today. Remember, you will soon have access to the complete interviews and transcripts. Keep an eye out for the link in the EXO newsletter. And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay well and craft extraordinary outcomes.